Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today we're going to look at Crevasse. So this is going to be kind of just a beginner's guide to Crevasse in general and explaining how it works. And then this is also a specific guide for Crevasse Hallowed Depths, which is currently active on Global at the day that this is going out. There's still 10 days left on it. Like, I would have liked to have gotten this video out sooner. It's just, it's been a crazy busy week for me, guys. I'm way behind on videos, so trying to catch up a little bit over the weekend, but I even got a lot of stuff going on this weekend, so we'll see. But this is one I definitely wanted to get out, right? So for those of you that are unfamiliar with Crevasse, basically the way it works is you've got a series of fights here on the right side, and these are lockout fights, so your goal is to try to perfect them, and then when you perfect them with certain characters, they will get locked out and you can't use them on the other fights. And then the big twist that Crevasse offers is that you have custom codes that you can add to the fights, and a code would be like you can only use like so many sword users or weapon type, you know, whatever weapon type it is, right? And then it also has different crystal type characters that you can add codes for, and then on the Lufenia fights you can set the Lufenia orb conditions, and then on the Shinryu fights you can set the condition to basically break their force time, which I don't think that's really a big deal with the way that these fights go, right? So those are some things there. Now the goal is, it's not just to perfect all the fights, but you need to use the codes in a way to give yourself a lot of points. And the goal really is to get your point total up. So you can see in the bottom left there, my score is 427. So what we'll do is we'll go to the details page, and we'll look at what the rewards are, and I'm going to let you guys know kind of what score you should be shooting for, right? So if we go into the reward page here, and there's a lot of good rewards in here, by the way. You can see to get all of the rewards you need 425, and I had 427, so I just squeaked by and got all of the rewards. Now, that was me just doing it with teams I was comfortable with. I did not try to maximize out. There are ways to really maximize your scoring and get even more points, which I will explain that in this video for those that want to attempt that. But if I hadn't gotten the tickets at the end, I wouldn't have cared. I would have just stopped, right? So really the goal you should be shooting for is that 350 mark, because you get a high power stone at 350, and that's really the end of the meaningful rewards. They really just threw 9 tickets at the end just for the people that want to shoot for higher score for fun, right? So I would not stress about 9 tickets if you don't get those. That's literally like just under 1 ticket multi, and with the way this game throws tickets at you, 1 ticket multi is not even a big deal, right? It's like, who cares? So just get 350. If you can get 350, you can bounce out. Don't stress out about 425, okay? So that's kind of the score that you're going to be shooting for, right? So let's say I go into a quest here. What happens is when you go into the quest, you can look at the normal mission rewards. You can look at the enemies, and enemies will have their own things going on. But then in the upper right here, you need to click Edit Code. And what happens is you click the top Edit, and you can set crystal and weapon requirements. Now, not every weapon is available. Like, for example, there are no fist codes, there are no whip codes, things like that. So really, and the reason why they don't allow codes for every weapon type is they do still want to sell you the current characters. So they're really going to focus the crystal colors and weapon types on the characters that are being featured to really try and sell those, right? So you have to be creative. So this, by the way, as a disclaimer, this is an event for more veteran players that have a large box. This is something that really is a roster check, right? So if you're a brand new player, definitely go into these fights and try to get some points, but don't expect to get the 350 or the 425, right? So just get what you can and do that there. But for those of you that do have a large roster, I will be talking strategy for how do we get the highest score, right? So really, when you go into a new Crevasse, the first thing you want to look at is like which weapon types and crystals do they have ×3 codes for, because the ×3 codes are going to give you the most points, and they're the most restricting, right? So in this Crevasse, we've got the unique weapon type, we've got the great sword weapon type, whoops, if it wants to pop up, the great sword type, and then we've got the normal sword. So these are the characters, for those that want to get max score, those are the weapon types you're going to want to gear into. Now for crystals, they do have every crystal color up, but not all of them have a ×3. So we have a black ×3, we have a yellow ×3, and we have a green ×3, okay? So basically what you want to do is a combination that would have 3 of the one weapon type and 3 of the crystal color at the same time. And if you can get through the hardest fights with those teams, you're going to get a ton of points, right? So let's go and look at, like, what should your strategy for this be? Oh, and the other thing is, is on the Lufenia and Shinryu fight, there's an extra code to set. So see at the bottom here, I have a force weakness, and I have 2 force weakness codes that I can use, right? So you have to pick one of those force weakness codes to add extra points. I actually had to do my Shinryus multiple times, because the first time I went through, I just thought there was already a force weakness set for me, and there wasn't. I had to set it, so I actually missed out on like half of the points, because I forgot to set a force weakness. So make sure you guys don't forget to set the force weakness, and you have to set the Lufenia code on the Lufenia fights, right? So if we look at parties here, so on the left here, I have a party set up. So there's basically 3 main parties that are going to give you the maximum points. So there is a black greatsword party. So this party here on the left has 3 greatswords, and they are all black. So this is just an example team comp of some of the better characters. Like, the rosters are super limited for this, by the way. So Zack, Garland, and Gladio would probably be an example set here. Auron would be a good substitute for Gladio, but using Auron and Gladio at the same time is a little redundant because they're both cover characters, so on any single attacks, you're only going to get the 1 counter anyways. You could still run Gladio and Auron, though, because if the enemy's doing a lot of all attacks, you will get double counters, so you could do that. Now, the one thing with this Black Greatsword team, there are no FR characters that are Black Greatswords at the moment on Global. So what I would do with this team comp, if you're trying to maximize your score, use this team comp on one of the Lufenia fights, because those are easier to get by without a force time, okay? Now, there are two teams that you can max out on for the Shinryu fights. So we have the green unique weapon team, and this is probably the most common team I'm seeing people run, which is Renoa, Ultimisia, and Cam. I think Renoa, Clouded Darkness, and Cam. I said Ultimisia because she's in the back of my mind, because I wanted to mention Ultimisia is also another viable runnable character you can use to substitute, but I would say these are probably the 3 highest quality characters you can use. The thing is you have to have them very high invest and kind of ready to go to do that, right? And then I think the other green one is Sync, and I would say Sync is probably the weakest option for this team, but I'm sure somebody's gotten it done with Sync, right? But I think Renoa and or Cam is a must-have, because you need to have your force weapons, right? So you would kind of tackle one of the 2 Shinryu fights with this team if you really, really want to maximize out on the points. And then the other team here would be Yellow Sword. And for here, the primary character you want to target is Arden. Now, I didn't tackle anything with a team like this just because I don't have Arden's FR, and I feel like the FR is too important. Now, I could have tried with Desh FR, but Desh FR, you know, I talked about it on the Crystal Chronicles podcast this week, but basically every FR before Cam they're just on a different level, like below everything else. Like, you just can't get the percentages. They're just way weaker, and Desh is one of those FRs that came out before Cam. So, like, you can run Desh FR, but you're going to need probably a total of 3 to 4 total FR times to get through with FRs on that level. So I don't know that Desh FR is the one that's going to carry you. Now, once again, there's really good players out there, really good theory crafters. There's people I've gotten through maybe without FRs on some of these Shinryus. But I'll talk about the fights. And the Defender Z fight, I almost feel like has to be impossible without a force time. But if you've all seen somebody do it without a force time, let me know, because I'd be very interested to see how somebody got that one done. But we'll talk about that. So those are basically the 3 teams to maximize out on. Now, if you're someone that's like, I don't have the box to do that, I don't know if I have those exact teams, because you need pretty particular characters, right? What you can do is basically go into a fight, look at the codes. So here's the strategy I do. Okay, so let me just kind of back out here. So let's say you're just jumping into Crevasse, you haven't done anything yet. The way you do Crevasse is there's like a Chaos mission, a Cosmos, a Chaos. There's 3 Lufenias and 2 Shinryus here, right? The way you want to tackle Crevasse, if you're someone that's going to attempt to get 350 points, you need to work backwards. So you start with the Shinryu first, because you need your best characters for those Shinryu fights. And what I do is, you go into the Shinryu, you kind of look at the enemies and kind of see what they do, if there's a particular elemental lockout, or if there's, like, if you might need a tank or something like that. But what I really do is I start with, like, a really powerful DPS force character, or, like, a force character, right? So I would start with the force character, choose them, and then build the team around them, while at the same time kind of looking at what codes you want to hit, right? So, for example, let's say you want to start with Renoa, because Renoa is a really popular DPS right now. A lot of people are going to be using Renoa on this fight. So, let's say, okay, I'm going to start with Renoa. You can say, okay, well, Renoa is green and Renoa is unique, right? So then you look at your roster, and if you can tie as many color combination, weapon combinations to Renoa, do it. So once again, if you have this full team here, bam, you can use both of your ×3 codes, you're good to go. But they have ×2 codes, right? So maybe maybe you want to use Selfie on this fight. I don't think you can launch these enemies, but let's just say you want to use Selfie. Well, Selfie, I think, is unique in yellow, right? So you can say, okay, I'll use my ×2 unique, and then I'll use one of my yellow crystals. And then that third slot, if your first two characters are different colors, you definitely want to try to match one of the colors. So then maybe you pick a unique green character, or maybe you pick a green with a different sword type, and you could use a ×1 single sword, and then maybe a ×2 green on this fight, right? It won't be the maximum points, but the more codes you can put in, the better. And that's really what you're doing. And then what you want to do is get those 2 Shinryu fights, get the best score you can with your characters, and then you go down the line. On the easier fights, you can really use up, like I would say if you have any ×3 you haven't used, try to use them on the Lufenia fight. If you can't get them done there, then use your ×3 on, you know, the Chaos fight. For sure, most people should be able to use your ×3s on the Chaos fights, right? So that's basically the strategy to it. So let's look at my teams. Excuse me, and I'll show you how I got it done. I am going to do separate uploads of my Shinryu runs. They're going to be slightly different than these team builds, but you know, I've seen people on these Shinryu runs, if you do the max teams, you get over 100 points per run, which is like almost getting all the missions done in just the 2 fights, right? So on Crevasse, Hallowed Depth 7, I used Luna Freya, Tifa, and Cater. And Cater was super good in this fight. So this is the Death Gaze fight. Now, there isn't anything too particular bad about the Death Gazes, except that, like, as you do your force time, they're going to do a lot of, you're going to hit a lot of thresholds, right? And what they do when they hit the thresholds is they're going to basically put a couple of debuffs on you, including a poison, and they're going to do this thing called like Rip Plus, and they're just going to do a ton of these in a row, and these are powerful HP attacks, right? Cater was amazing for dealing with this fight because she has lock, and she will dodge, so she'll dodge these powerful attacks, but even when they're not locked onto Cater, she has a very powerful freeze debuff, and the freeze debuff is really important for getting past these Death Gazes, because when they do these Rip Plus attacks, they can't gain Brave, and so even if they're hitting your other characters, they won't die. So I'd say once you have the freeze debuff set up, your biggest obstacle in this fight is getting around the poison debuff. So you either have to time it where like you're gonna be able to heal up right before you deal the finishing blow, or you have to have characters that give you debuff immunity like Aerith, or you have to bring Isuna characters like Yuna or Balthier who can cleanse those debuffs off of you, right? So I'll upload a video of my run. Now, the video that I'm uploading, it's the same fight as I would have done here, but I forgot to put the other code on, and I didn't realize that at the time. So I'm missing the I'm missing the code for the force time. So my score ended up only being like 40 points for the fight, and then just by adding that force time code, it brought it up to 93. So it's a huge difference if you forget that code, right? So Luna Freya, Tifa, and Cater. And so what I did was I made this a ×3 yellow team, so I kind of made that the focus. So what I did here with this run was I said I want to use Tifa as my DPS, because to me Tifa and Renoa are the path of least resistance in these fights. So I said I'm going to do, one's going to be a Tifa fight and one's going to be a Renoa fight. That's kind of the way I started out, right? So then with Tifa, I saw that, you know, after trying to fight a couple times, I really felt that Cater was a great fit for this fight. So I went for Cater in the yellow slot, and then Luna Freya is just ridiculous, right? So I ended up using a ×1 wand and a ×1 gun on this. So the big thing is with Tifa, her weapon is not a it's not a code you can use. So Fist is not an option. So bringing Tifa isn't optimal for points, but you can see I still got 427. So you can still bring Tifa. You don't have to have every code in there, but we got it done, right? Now my second fight here, this is versus Defender Zs. The Defender Zs don't do anything too crazy. They are fairly aggressive though, so a tank is very good for this fight. I feel like a tank makes this fight a lot easier. So I think they're kind of featuring like Arden here, or like wanting you to have a tank that can handle it. Actually, they're probably featuring Arden for the Death Gazes, because all those Rip Pluses are crazy. But the big thing with the Defender Zs, and this is the one where I want to know if anybody actually beat this without a force time. The reason why I feel like you need a force time in this fight is because when they go into their, the one thing is they charge their force gauge ridiculously fast. And then when they're in force time, they heal by like 2.5 million every turn that they take. So if you're trying to take one of these like off turn team comps, like it's not going to work because they're going to heal up more than your off turn is going to do damage. Like it's crazy. So for this fight, I really wanted Rinoa because I wanted my most aggressive AoE DPS. Like I wanted to melt these guys out quick because they heal and it's annoying. So I started with Rinoa here, and then I looked at crystal color and said, okay, Rinoa is green. So I kind of went with the, you know, the 2 unique weapon types and the 2 greens. So I did bring Clouded Darkness here to have 2 unique weapon types and 2 greens. But then, you know, I didn't want, you know, I could have put Cam in here also, right? But what I decided was I didn't really want to go for that all-out full team because the fight was a little too aggressive for me. And I wanted to make it easier for myself with the tank. So I just threw in Gladio and I used the ×1 black and a ×1 greatsword. Still got 97 points. Plenty good enough, right, to get the, for sure to get the 350. So you don't have to stress out about using those team comps I talked about earlier, right? And then the rest of the fight, it was a lot easier to go in. So like on one Lufenia fight, I said, all right, now I'm going to use my ×3 unique. So I just brought out 3 really good unique characters. So we had Cam, Charlotta, and Selfie. That team blew up the fight pretty easily. Then this fight here, I didn't in particular use a ×3. I could have maybe done my, I probably should have done my ×3 sword. Because I don't think I used my ×3 normal sword anywhere, but this was fine. This was definitely good enough. I think I brought Vanille here because I think the enemies did have a lot of like really nasty buffs. So I don't know, I brought Vanille. Basically with the Lufenia fights, if you bring a force character, your goal is just get into force time as quick as possible and you'll kill them like before the force time ends. Like they're not built for force time, so it's really easy to get those Lufenia fights. You do have to look at the orb conditions a little bit and just be careful about that, but make sure you manually put an orb condition on to get the points, right? And then in this fight, I just did Zac, Beatrix, and Oron. So I used my ×3 greatsword here, and then ×2 black. I could have done my ×3 black, but I used that on a different fight, so I just used that on some of the, and then obviously these first 2 fights are just a joke, just do whatever. But you can see, if you get into the range on your Shinri fights, if you have like 90 something, like close to 100 points on those, and then all my Lufenia fights are all in the 60 range, and then the other 2 fights are just like 20 to 30. Like that's really where you want to be sitting to get the max score. So anyways, guys, I hope this guide on Crevasse helps. If you have any questions or something I forgot about, please let me know. If you need help with team building for Crevasse, feel free to join my Discord. My Discord is in the description of all my videos. We have some team building channels in there. We got some DFFOO, we got some DOKKAN in there, so feel free to hop in and join us. So anyways, guys, hope this video helps. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.